So, you've heard about this game called Star Citizen, and you're not necessarily sure what it's all about, but you've heard that it has some stuff to do with like truck simulator in space and FPS combat, and you heard there's a free fly going on. And that's what we're here for today. So you might think that you'd go to starcitizen.com, but you don't. Instead, you're going to go to robertspaceindustries.com. So this is where you're going to land if you just go to the main website, and there's this Discover Our Universe pop-up, and you can click Don't Show Me Again. You have the normal Allow Selection or Allow All Cookies buttons. But because this is a free fly, instead we're going to go to /flyfree. This current free fly goes until July 17th, but if you're here in the future, there are going to be a date for whenever the fly ends. Sometimes it's a week, sometimes it's 2 weeks. And so we're going to click Enlist. And here you have a pop-up that asks for your account name, which is your call sign. That's what everyone's going to know you by. And you can change your display name later, but your account name is always going to stay the same. And then you have your email, and you make a password, you put in your birth date, and then here's the important part. There's going to be a spot for a referral code. And so if you have friends that play, definitely use theirs. That will help them out a lot. But if you don't, you can go ahead and use mine. Star KQ9VSS9K. And I'll put that down in the video's description. And if you use this code, it'll give you whatever the referral bonus is if there's one running. So currently that's an STV. Last time it ran, it was a small snub fighter called a Merlin. And before that, I think it was some sort of a Argo cargo or something. But it's usually always valued somewhere between $25 and $40. And you can choose to upgrade that if you want. If you do upgrade it to a different ship, it's one of the few things you want to be aware of. You can't melt that ship. You are stuck at whatever level you upgrade it to. So you can usually melt other ships if you buy them and you decide you want to change it around. You can melt it back for store credit and buy something else. Free referral ships, you are stuck at whatever you upgrade it to. So it's generally best to pick something that's more inexpensive, but something that you really want. The $25 to $40 will just be a little bit of a discount towards whatever you upgrade it to, or you can just leave it at whatever the referral bonus is. And one of the neat things is when you use one of these referral codes, whoever's code you used, they also get one. So it helps me out as well. The next thing you're going to do is you're going to go click the Access Free Fly button. And we already have the launcher installed, so you're going to go through the two-factor authentication just to make sure that it's really your account, really your email address. I usually click 1 year, and you launch the game, and you click Accept, and you click Acknowledge, because you're letting them know that it's an alpha, and it's going to have bugs. And the first thing when you get to the loading screen, you're not going to have a friends list or anything. You have the option to click on Persistent Universe, and that's what you want to click. And the game has a pretty reasonably robust character creation system. I'm not going to go through that right now, but there are plenty of things that you can experiment with to make your character the way that you want it to look. And they're going to be adding even more to this soon. We're going to skip right through that for now. So the next thing that you're going to do is you're going to click the Play the Tutorial button. And it's going to start you off at Area 18. Normally, I start off at Orison because of all the ship customization stuff that's available there, but for now, Area 18 is fine. So the first thing that you're going to see when you load in is you're going to be laying down in a bed inside of one of the HAB units. You're going to see several new objective notifications pop up, but the important thing is that you want to open up the journal first, and then after that you'll have to wait a little bit, so you might as well read it. Go ahead and pause here if you need to catch up. You'll notice off to the right, there's some keyboard shortcuts, and these are going to be really handy for guiding you through the game. One of the other things that's important to take note of is that throughout the game, they have signage, and unlike just decorative signage in a lot of games, these signs actually mean something and actually matter. You're going to want to read what they say and take note so that later on when you need to navigate around, you're not going to be completely lost. We're going to go ahead and turn off the chat with the F12 key, and then hit I to open up our inventory. So now that the new objective is popped up, we'll be able to pick up the burrito and pick up the drink. And those are some of the food items that we're going to be able to access, which are going to keep our hunger and thirst monitored and under control. You can see down at the bottom left, There are meters for both of those, and different kinds of food are going to affect them in different ways. There are some food and drinks that make you hungrier faster or thirstier faster, and there are some that make you less hungry or less thirsty for longer times. You can use the F key to interact with things around you. This includes stuff on the ground, doors, panels, chairs, and it allows you to decide what you want to do with them. I personally don't like to leave a bunch of stuff on the ground because it clutters things up, and with enough it can actually make the servers run slower, so I just put things in my inventory and then later on you can clear them out. Now we're going to leave the hab unit and we're going to go into this hallway, and I'm going to move pretty fast because I know where I'm going, but if you need to slow it down, feel free. Right outside, it looks like someone dropped a hospital gown here, and so I'm going to show you a couple tricks just in case you're having issues with the inventory. These are good things to know. You can crouch down, hold F, and grab it, but you can also open up the inventory and drag it into your inventory from the ground if it's inside the accessible area. There's a little bit of a bug where you can't grab items on you right away, but if you grab an empty spot in the inventory window, drag it to the center and release it, then when you hover over items, you'll be able to interact with them freely. And this whole system is also useful just in case something's on the ground and you're trying to interact with it and it's not letting you pick it up. Theoretically, you should just be able to drag any item to your hand or onto your armor, but sometimes that doesn't work. And so one of the things that you can do if it's in your inventory is you can drag it onto the ground, let it go, and then crouch down beside it, and then you can pick it up from the ground. This is a common workaround if you're trying to drink an item and it's not letting you move it directly into your hand. You drop it on the ground and then pick it up from the ground, and then you can drink it from there. If neither of these work, I suggest relogging into a server that is more cooperative. And of course, sometimes you drop an item on the ground and there is server lag and it just doesn't appear for a while. Sometimes it takes 2 seconds, sometimes it takes 30 or a minute, but that's usually pretty rare. There are several kinds of useful kiosks around the verse. There are these ones which you can use for delivering packages, and then there are also these which are useful for clearing crime stats below level 3. Sometimes when you have a level 1 or 2, you can pay them off. Level 3 or above, you actually have to go to prison because you've probably killed someone that you shouldn't have. But you can turn yourself into these, and I think you get a fairly substantial discount on your prison time for turning yourself over, so that's always worth considering. Here we have the city map. This is the currently explorable area of ArcCorp, which will eventually be expanded to a much larger area, but it basically shows you where all of the different kinds of shops are and how to get to the tram lines, which are your way off planet. And of course, just like every city center, there's litter on the ground, which you can interact with like I described before. You store an item, it will usually store it if you have a backpack or armor. You can't directly store it into local inventory. Here we have Cubby Blast. They sell armor, some clothing, some drinks, weapons, etc. Here are the shopping terminals. You can use these to choose what you're going to buy and where you're going to put it when you buy it. You have a ship on planet, you can actually buy things directly into your ship, which is very useful to know. There's, like I said, armor and weapons and guns, and sometimes there are glitches that prevent you from buying certain things, but if you know what you're looking for, you can type it into the search. So we're going to buy the orc helmet in white, and that is because it looks similar to the armor that we already have, and we want to look like we know what we're doing. Having a helmet's important because if you don't have one, you can't breathe in space and you'll die very quickly. You can either click the X or you can just back up from the terminal and you hit I to open up your inventory and you double click on the helmet. Whenever I'm in a landing zone, I try to remember to buy myself some extra drinks or med pens just so that if I come in, I can pick it up immediately without having to stop by a store. It just saves time because whenever you're in a landing zone, you have access to the local inventory wherever you're at, including within 10 kilometers of the landing zone, even if you're still in your ship. Tiger claws are also nice to have because you can use them for hacking stuff. Cruise Lux is one of the drinks that gives you a little bit slower metabolism, which means that your hunger doesn't go down as fast. And there are also drinks that make your thirst go down slower. Those ones are called Synergy, and you can get them at certain shops. Most experienced Star Citizen players rarely eat or drink anything that isn't one of these, because Cruise Lux actually fills up your hunger and thirst at the same time, and it's just really efficient. And like I said earlier, sometimes if you're trying to buy a specific thing and it's not showing up, you'll be able to find it on the walls around the shop. Real quick here, I'm just going to grab us a weapon so that we have one, but you can also loot a bunch of weapons during missions, and at least initially you should be able to run in and knock out some of the NPCs by hand if you're really desperate. Hopefully when they're a little bit more responsive, that'll be less easy. Kasaba's to our right, they sell clothing, and it's pretty cool, but you can't wear armor and clothing at the same time, and you don't want to go into space with civilian clothing because you won't be able to breathe. You can change the speed that you're walking or running by using the scroll wheel, so there are certain instances, especially when you're in like a crowded area with other players, where you want to change your speed down to walk, so that you don't shove someone into the wall of an elevator and damage them, or in some cases even through a wall or through the side of a ship. I'm gonna make a detour into the hospital right now. Every hospital's gonna have a few things that you want to know about. First, you have the pharmacy, and the pharmacy is going to sell medical equipment, so a variety of medical pens. These are easily usable, and you can attach them to your belt so that you can access them if there's an emergency. You also have the med gun, which has most of the functionality of all of the different pens and takes a little bit longer to use, but it also lets you fine-tune the amount of each med that you apply, and it's easier to use on other people from a distance than using a pen. These kiosks let you check into the hospital, so if you have a more serious injury, you will have the insurance kiosks. These are where you're going to be able to reset your spawn either to your original spawn location, which in this case for us right now is ArcCorp, but you can also set your spawn to any of the Kelto RX hospitals on space stations or any of the main hospitals in the landing zones. There are also at least one ship right now, and there will be more in the future, where you can set your spawn so that if you die and you're within a certain radius, you'll respawn on those ships instead of at one of the hospitals. Currently there's the Carrack, and soon there's going to be the 600i. Something that is immersive but also annoying after you've played long enough is the fact that you actually have to wait for transit. So right now the timers are only, in this case, like 40 seconds to a minute. Sometimes they're shorter or longer depending on how many trams there are. But basically, now's a good time to take a look at your inventory, make sure that your settings are set up well, and just keep an ear out for when the tram announces that it's arriving, or you'll miss it and have to wait again. You can also equip any items that you want to and make sure that your helmet is on. When you need to use a med pen, the default binding is C, so you might fall or trip, and that can actually happen where you take damage. Sometimes it's a glitch and you're just walking, but basically you hold C and it will put the med pen into your hand, and then you left click to apply it to yourself, or you can crouch down to make yourself closer to someone who's on the ground, and you can right click to apply it to someone else and potentially revive them. As you can see, you may have some graphical glitches occasionally. Unfortunately, there's also been some issues where people have actually fallen through the floor, but it seems to be fairly stable right now. So during the tutorial, you're going to have access to one ship for the remainder of the tutorial, which is about 15 to 30 minutes. And that ship is the C8 Pisces. It's a great little shuttle. It has some room for cargo, it has a quantum drive, and it has some weapons, and that's about it. Another advantage of this and a couple of other smaller ships is that you can actually pull them out at landing zones with a size 1 ship terminal pad. Larger ships you're going to have to actually pull from a station, but if you get stuck in a mining area and you have a size 1 ship, you can pull it out, and that will allow you to get yourself off planet. What the C8 doesn't have is a bed, and if you want to pause somewhere, if you have to get off the game for a bit and you don't want to have to spawn back at the last station or planet that you were at, then you do need a ship with a bed. So that's something to take into account. Here we have some more of those terminals for paying off crime stats, and basically it will show you what you did, when and where you did it, and how much you owe. Again, if you're feeling lost, always look around for signs. They'll generally tell you where you are and where you're going. There are also terminals where you can rent ships that you don't have access to through the online store where you pay real money. For a sec, I thought that guy didn't have a face. These are usually available about 3 months, but sometimes as much as 6 months after they were initially sold for real money for pledges, and then you can access them in game. And that's something to take note of. You can pretty much always earn ships with money that you earn in game, and you will have them until the next patch where there's a wipe. The first time you pull a ship in game, you're going to have to request delivery. It's important to note that you usually don't want to request delivery for all of your ships, because while this is instant when you request delivery, any subsequent time where you request that ship at any terminal, unless this is the terminal where you stored it at, you're going to have to either pay an expedite fee or wait a fairly substantial time for the insurance claim. Once it's delivered, you're going to make your way over to the elevator and make sure you check which hangar it's in. And then you go to the hangar through the elevator, and that's where you'll find your ship. As usual, now's a good time to check and make sure you have your helmet on. If you landed to take a drink of water or top up your food supply, then you might not have it on, and you will find out as soon as you get out of your ship in a place without atmosphere. So this is the C8 Pisces that we talked about earlier. As you can see, it has some missiles, some light armaments, and it looks pretty cool. The main thing to keep in mind is that every ship's going to be a little bit different, but what you're looking for is this glowing button right here, which will allow you to open up the ramp and get inside. Some ships are a little bit more dark than others before the ship's powered on and the lights are turned on, but you do have a light on your helmet and you can switch that on with the T hotkey. Like we said earlier, the ship has some room for a few storage boxes, and then you have the seat. And the default most people are going to start out with is going to be a mouse and keyboard, and you can check all of your key bindings in the escape menu. But the key binding to start your ship is going to be R. Newer ships or ships that have been updated and gone up to gold standard currently also have the option to use all of the buttons and switches on the dash, and you can use those to control the ship. And once the ship's online, then you can see these. They're called MFDs, or multifunction displays. and different buttons on them and different menus on them give you control over different parts of the ship, from your shields to your components, your comms, and these allow you to manage what's going on in your ship. These are a lot more important on larger ships when you have a lot more systems involved. But even on smaller ships, they give you vital information that tell you what your ship's status is. They allow you to see things like damage and control your thrust, shields, and weapons capacitors. When you've targeted a ship, it will show up pretty much just like yours, and it'll give you the same kind of status readings, and sometimes even more if you've scanned it. When you want to leave the hangar, there are several things that you can do. You have access here in your MFD to your comms, but you can also access it through your Mobi-Glass or through a hotkey. I have mine set to home, but you can set it to whatever you find convenient. Once comms is open, you're going to navigate to the Friends tab, and in this case, you're going to contact Area 18 Landing Services. Then you can press F4, and this will allow you to see a third-person view of your ship. You can use Z to navigate your camera so that you have a view of the ceiling, or in some cases you'll be in a horizontal hangar where you will be able to fly straight out the front door. This is one of the areas of the in-game tutorial that I find to be a little bit lacking because it doesn't really give you a good overview of the controls. I highly recommend hitting escape and going to the key bindings menu to look at what they're set to. But in general, your forward, backward, left, and right are going to be set to W, S, A, and D. And then your up and down are going to be space and control, where your roll keys are going to be Q and E, and your pitch and yaw are going to be set to the axes of your mouse, with your speed limiter being on the scroll wheel and your weapon groups being set to right click and left click, with left click being your primary weapon group and right click being secondary if you have multiple groups set. Middle click is going to switch you over to your missile operating mode, and tab is going to scan. Holding shift is going to boost your ship, and you have a limited boost bar, but you can accelerate a little bit longer or have your boost bar recharge a little bit faster if you use that triangle we looked at earlier and move it to the bottom to set your capacitors to give you more thrust capability. Looking at the augmented reality heads-up display of your ship, you're going to have the boost indicator on the left-hand side. Right next to that, you have your current thrust output. Next to that, you have your speed indicator, and then you have the SCM, which is your standard control mode bar. That has green at the bottom in this case. Some ships have it as blue, and then red when you go above SCM speed, which is when you're going at full cruising speed. This is going to change in future iterations. They're currently working on master modes, and you can look up Star Citizen master modes for the content and the videos that they've put out on that. Those are theoretically coming maybe later this year, but for now, this is the flight system that we have. Just a note here, we are following the little heads-up waypoints on the display, and these are going to guide us out of ArcCorp, Area 18. This is also a good time to check and see if you remembered or forgot anything, because while you're still within the 10-kilometer limit, you can access the local inventory even from your ship. Make sure you have a helmet, etc. It's also a good time to fly around and get a little bit of a handle on all of these new controls. It does seem like a lot, but you'll be flying like a pro in no time. Above these, you have your radar signatures. So I believe you have your infrared signature, which is how much heat you're putting out. You have your cross section, which is how large your ship is. And you have your EM signature, which is how much power you're using. Going right from there, you have the speed limiter. You have your pitch indicator, which shows you what angle of attack you're currently at. And if it's at 90, you're going straight up. If it is at 0, it means you're level with the horizon. Now we're going to use the quantum system. You're going to hit the B as in boy button, and this is going to bring up your quantum HUD, which gives you a spooling at the top and a calibration on the left. And these are going to load up, and when both of them have fully loaded, you will be able to hold the B button in order to proceed with your quantum jump. Each quantum location is marked on the map when you hit B, and you can point towards it, or you can hit F2 to access the map, and you can select them and set a point, which will give you all of the steps you need to get there. It will also tell you how much fuel it will take and if you have enough. The two little bracket arrows that are pointed towards each other that are drifting towards the center of the screen is your vector indicator. This is important so that you know where you will continue to fly if you do not apply more thrust. Something important to note right here is that when you are pointed in a direction and approaching an object like a station or an asteroid, you never want to be pointed directly at it. You always want to approach it at a slight tangent so that if you have cruise control on, or if you lose control of your speed or are approaching too quickly, you will pass by it and not fly into it. It's also useful when it's dark to use tab so that you can track where locations are as they update, and if ships come out from behind something or other obstacles hadn't loaded in properly, like invisible asteroids. Yes, invisible asteroids are a thing, and you can hit them and they will kill you. One thing to note here is that you will never be assigned a hangar that your ship cannot fit, but sometimes it does get very close. Speaking of being assigned a hangar, you use the same either hotkey, like home, or you use your mobi-glass or your HUD on your MFD in order to call the local landing services or air traffic control. I don't know why it's called air traffic control when there's no air, but I digress. And they will assign you a hangar. The rectangle around the ship's reticle gives you a good idea of where your ship can fit. So if you're approaching a hangar or a crevice and you use that and you get closer and it looks like it's too big, then you probably should slow down, maybe enter third person and look at it from the side and reassess whether or not it is a good fit for you. Now time to make sure that you have your landing gear out. I currently have my landing gear and my call air traffic control button bound to the same thing, so that whenever I call air traffic control, it either stows or pulls out my landing gear. After you line up with the augmented reality indicators for the landing pad, you can either use control, or if you have it bound, whatever your descend key is, or you can hold N and it will auto land for you. It's important to note here that you always want to turn off your engines when you're getting out of your ship. You do this by pressing the I key. If you don't, multiple things can go wrong, including your ship lifting off without you, or your ship spawning in off the ground where you can't reach it. This takes a lot of time because you have to go back and forth to the ASOP terminal, pull your power supply out, restow your ship, and then recall your ship so that you can turn off the engines, then put your ship away, pull the power supply back into the ship, and then call it again. Or you may just find yourself falling as you exit the ramp or the ladder. Always turn off your ship engines. Now that we're out of our ship, we're going to take the elevator to the ASOP terminals, where we're going to store our ship. During free flies, you'll have access to more than just this starter ship. They usually give you at least one, and currently you have access to 12 of the better ships in the game to try out different game loops. Now that we're done with the basic tutorial, I'm going to show you some bonus stuff. It's always a good idea to know which station you're in, and they put it in a big sign right above the ASOP terminals. You have a set of basic armor and some equipment. And they give you some more money so that you can get on your feet a little bit faster. Remember, you have the journal that you can go back and reference with all of the information that they fed you through the tutorial, and it's a great place to go back and look at other things like how you randomly picked up that crime stat, or what sells where for how much. Comlink is where you're going to be able to access your party information, the names of all the people on the server, the people that you want to talk to, and your friends list. Currently, if you want to add someone, you have to add them from the main menu if you're going to try typing in their name. Otherwise, you can only right-click and add people who are in the server currently. Again, F2 is how you get to the star map. This is currently in need of a lot of TLC, but they do have a new one, and it's mostly done, and we'll get it eventually. The Knickknacks app is where you track all of the items that you've lost throughout the verse. You can sort by which planet and star system, but currently we only have Stanton, and it will tell you what items are in what locations, and you can find stuff that way. Unfortunately, there's not a search bar yet, but hopefully they fix this soon. MO Trader is how you send money and receive money from other players. So if you are doing missions with people and you don't have them in your party, but you want to share some of the loot you got, or you just want to be nice to someone, you can send them money through here. If you want to add me, it's SHARXBYTE, and I'm happy to help you out as long as I'm online and not terribly busy doing something else. Your Contract Manager app is going to contain all of the jobs that you have access to. These generally start out very basic and get more complex as you do the other jobs earlier in the series. So if you do very low risk target bounties, eventually you can work your way up to the very high end, either critical rate beacons or the elite risk targets. The mission types currently available are delivery, racing, research, salvage, maintenance, bounty hunter, mercenary, and search. And these give you kind of a feeling for the game loops that are currently available in the game. These are expanding actually pretty rapidly these days, and they keep adding more missions and mission types, basically with every patch. Regardless of what type of mission you're doing, you generally always want to have a call to arms taken, because anytime you end up killing someone who is a criminal, it will pay you for it. You also have access to personal missions, and these are great because they pay more, but you do have to be very careful because some of them are inherently criminal, and if you don't check who sent you the mission and you do a criminal mission, you might find yourself in Klesha Rehabilitation Center. And we're not looking at the Moby Glass anymore, but the next to the missions tab, you have the wrench, which is your vehicle maintenance and services. This is really only useful while you're sitting in the cockpit on a landing pad. Then you have the journal, which we already looked at, and then Delphi, which is how you track all of your progress with the different factions around Stanton, and eventually the universe at large. On our left here, we're going to see the hot dog stand, and this is a really quick place if you just need to grab some food or some drinks. They're not the most nutritious, but they will stop you from dying. You go through the elevators over there. You also have access to the food court and cargo area. We're going to make a quick left and then a right and go to the medical clinic. On your left here, we are going to go to the insurance kiosk, which allow us to set our spawn here. So if we die, we will spawn back here instead of all the way down on Area 18 on our port. We have a pharmacy again. These terminals let you check out a room to heal in if you need something more advanced than a med gun or pen will do, and they can also regenerate your hunger and thirst. And the last thing that I'm going to show you how to do is I'm going to take you to the cargo area. We'll take a look at what they have there. We'll grab a multi-tool, and you can also buy some armor as well as other equipment there. They have some industrial clothing that you can put on, although it doesn't really help right now, and you can't wear it when you have a spacesuit on. This set of Novikov armor is really useful if you're in cold environments, and there's a different set that's called Pembroke that is good on hot environments. These are the only ways to keep alive in the more extreme area. You can buy stuff directly off of the racks or from the kiosks. And this is the Gray Cat Pyro Multi-Tool, which is one of the tools you're going to use the most throughout the verse. We'll go ahead and buy one. You have a couple different attachments here, and there are more inside of the kiosk. You have shoes, but again, you can't really wear those if you have on an undersuit. So now we're going to check out the kiosk. So inside the kiosk, you have the Novikov set. It's always worth having one of those. And you have the Aryl armor set, which is a decent all-around mid-tier armor set. Remember what we said about buying some drinks so that you always have them in stock. So under this personal weapons tab, we have access to the Pyro Multi-Tools, and now we can buy them in bulk instead of individually. We also have access to a few of the different heads, and the tractor beam is one of the most useful ones. Basically, it's one of those things that you really never want to leave anywhere without, because you will miss it. I like to stock up and get 10 or 20 at each location where I land, so that I never am worrying about whether or not I have to go all the way to the cargo area if I'm in a rush. Now we're back on the website, and we're going to click on the Pledge Store and navigate to the area where they sell the starter packs. These are the starter packs that they have available, and for some reason they have the event ones at the bottom, but you can go ahead and look at these. They are discounted, and they're both very good for starting out, but if you want to start out a little higher end, it's almost impossible to go wrong with the Cutlass Black. It's a great all-arounder ship. It has room for 2 people in it as well as cargo. It can fit small vehicles, and it's just a great starting ship. But if I was going to start with something a little bit smaller, I might go with either the 315P, which is one of my favorite ships, or you could go down a step with the 100 series, either the 125A or the Cutter, which is another ship by Drake, and it's a slightly smaller play off of the Cutlass Black. In the middle, you have the Avenger Titan, and basically every ship that they advertise as a starter is useful and worthwhile, except the Mustangs. Don't buy a Mustang. And probably avoid the Arrow and Gladius too, as they are only good for combat and they don't have any cargo space. So after you've decided whether or not you want to pick up the game, it might be helpful to figure out what you want to do inside the game and how to do it. And that's where the guide system comes in. So you navigate here by going to the community section and then clicking on Spectrum, and then this little torch icon underneath your avatar. From here, you can select from the guides that are available after choosing which area you'd like to be guided in, and currently they're running an event where you get rewarded and the guide gets rewarded for spending time in the system and learning about the game. Finally, I just want to thank you all for spending your time with me today. I hope that I was able to show you some tips and tricks you didn't know about, and if you're very new to the game, I hope that you are able to find your way into the verse and find a welcoming community. Again, please feel free to use my referral code, but if you do have friends that play, make sure you use theirs because it'll help them out too. Please like, subscribe, and share, and hopefully you'll be back to see more of the great content that I look forward to putting out for you. See you in the verse.